And joining us on the show this evening are Ray Locker, author and presidential historians, live from Washington this evening, Washington DC, Ravi Batra, attorney, chair, National Advisory Council for South Asia Affairs, that's Dr. Ravi Batra, Andrew K.P. Leung, who's international and independent China strategist, he's live from Hong Kong, Captain Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, security analyst, Srijan Pal Singh, CEO, Kalam Center and policy analyst, Savio Rodriguez, the chief editor of Goa Chronicle, Ketan Vaidya, who's a journalist, Professor D.K. Giri. So we have a lot of panelists, so we'll have enough time to cover the subject. Let me start with Andrew. Andrew, not sure whether you've come across this report, but we've been talking about it. Not just this report, but all the circumstantial evidence that's now coming out. I'm sure you've been following it. US federal data, and the Daily Mail has reported that the Pentagon has given about $39 million to a charity that funded the controversial COVID research, the coronavirus research at a Chinese lab accused of being the source for COVID-19. And they've cited federal data. And the news comes as the charity's chief, British-born scientist Dr. Peter Daszak, was exposed in what is now being most popularly being referred to as conflict of interest backroom campaign to discredit lab leak theories. Andrew, how do you respond to this?
Yes, of course, I've read these reports in the press, which, of course, bear out the fact that virology research is not a recent phenomenon. In fact, it started decades ago. In fact, the world's largest virology lab was established in the United States shortly after the Second World War in Fort Detrick, D-E-T-R-I-C-K, in Maryland. And the scientists in that lab came with the knowledge from wartime Germany and wartime Japan. And these top scientists were working in the, and also the research material was transferred to Fort Detrick. And of course, that the Fort Detrick, in fact, collaborated with other research institutions, including Wuhan, and indeed other countries, including France. So I think that that's a fact. So this virology research is nothing new. And more so, in 2015, there was a report published by the Fort Detrick of the discovery of a coronavirus in 2015 in the world-renowned journal Nature. You can check that on Google, all right? So I think that there is a lot of collaboration in this field. And as far as China is concerned, China, in fact, was open to an international investigation, not only in Wuhan, but in other labs, particularly in the Fort Detrick lab. Now, there's also a very important incident which happened in, around Fort Detrick in August 2019, before the spread of the virus in Wuhan. The Fort Detrick lab was closed all of a sudden, having discovered mysterious illnesses, which they described as a kind of electronic cigarette. But in fact, the symptoms were extremely similar to what we're experiencing in the coronavirus phenomenon. So I think that this is a lot of things to look into. And also there is another fact which has got to be looked into as well, because the coronavirus started to spread in China in, say, December or January, in December 2019. But 3 or 4 months before that, recently, there was a discovery in Italy, a virus, the kind of COVID-19 virus in Italy. So that suggests that the virus could have happened in other countries as well. So I think that we have got to look at all the facts.
I'm not sure.
Being seized upon conspiracy theory.
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about your Italy theory. Mr. Liu, Mr. Andrew Leung, I'm not so sure about your Italy theory. Ravi Batra is coming in. Ravi Batra, I think it's a matter of record now that the first case of COVID-19 was reported from Wuhan. Mr. Andrew Leung obviously trying his best, and I don't think he'll be quite convincing when he says the first case was probably discovered in Italy.
Well, first of all, good to be with you, Niranjan. I thought I was appearing on Republic TV, not Ripley's Believe It or Not. So there's really no point wasting time talking about what Andrew said, because this is dissembling at its worst.
Yes.
And frankly, continues the fraud. What we need to do is we need to move past tort principles and crime and punishment principles to now working on Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Desmond Tutu type paradigm, because we need to disarm this lab-created virus monster. It's a biowarfare monster, and we need to disarm it. That's good for China. It's good for India. It's good for the United States. As far as all this dissembling we've just heard, please, give it when you do a fictional show, or have him couple up with Peter Daszak. Then they'll be the perfect couple, because Peter Daszak is fraud, waste, and abuse. 100 years ago, during the Great Depression in the United States and around the world, there was something called Bonnie and Clyde. And they said, why do you rob banks? They said, because that's where the money is. Well, Peter Daszak has been robbing the federal government, and over a bunch of years has collected over $120 million from the federal government, and has become the most ardent lover of Wuhan virus lab, which is PLA-owned. There's no question that the gain-of-function research was done there. There's no question it leaked out. There's no question they had very poor protocols, which was documented in 2017. And in fact, that leak, there is no date of that leak. And it is from that leak that it ended up in Sapporo, it ended up in Milano, Italy, it ended up in Europe, it ended up in the United States. So the fact that it came out of Wuhan is not a dispute, and anyone who says it needs to go to Ripley's Believe It or Not. The protein string of this virus, which is the original leak, is a different protein string than the one that was released at the cover-up site, the Wuhan wet market, on December 30th, 2019. And if you look at the protein string, you'll see they have different chains. And a protein string basically is a blockchain. So you can't really mess with it, and when you mess with it, it shows you mess with it. So it is a documented fact that it is a gain-of-function research that was being carried on, and the fact that Peter Daszak was funding this is a question now for our Attorney General, Judge Merrick Garland, to investigate him for money laundering of federal grant money. He took the money from the federal government, the Department of Defense, almost $40 million, over $60 million from State Department, USAID, and about $20 million from HHS. Okay? So it's a lot of money, and Peter Daszak has become the cover-up artist for China because he's got to cover his own criminality. And the man needs to be investigated, and every one of his aiders and abettors needs to be brought to trial and to justice. And that's for us to do, to clean house, because we have fraudsters, but we have to disarm this virus. And by the way, to disarm this virus, no more Ripley's Believe It or Not nonsense. To share airspace with Ripley's Believe It or Not is a waste of the public trust. Yeah. And it continues to create mumbo-jumbo and mislead our policymakers and our leaders in governments all over the world who have bought this mumbo-jumbo. We need to stop it.
Yeah. Dr. Ravi Batra, now let me tell you something. Ray Locker's on the show. Ray Locker, Eco Health Alliance, and I think everyone's, it's now a matter of record that this, federal grants being used to fund gain-of-function research, partly or fully. These experiments where dangerous viruses were made more infectious, to study their effect on human cells is known. But why do you think the US is being a little cagey about the manner in which they're going about asking for accountability from China, vis-a-vis, let's say, comparing it to the Trump regime? Or do you believe it's measured? Ray Locker?
I think we are asking the Chinese for accountability, but we shouldn't take it as a, with that any caveats. We know that China lies. We knew China was lying when the virus made its first appearance. I mean, that's what we've come to expect from that government. And all this talk about whether it came from the lab, very possible that it did. We don't know exactly for sure. Covers up in a lot of ways the Trump administration's terrible response to the pandemic and its spread. And one of the reasons why people didn't want to believe the lab leak theory is because Trump was using it as a diversion to take attention away from his response to the virus, which was terrible. Now, I've looked at these contract documents to EcoHealth from the Defense Threat Reduction Agency and other places. A lot of this money didn't go to Wuhan. We don't know how much of it went to. So to say that the United States government was funding a charity that was funding Wuhan, I think is misleading. Obviously, there was a relationship, and we need to know what that relationship is, not just to get to the bottom of what happened with this current pandemic, but for future pandemics. And we heard from the people in Wuhan itself, there's a danger of a pandemic coming on. And Andrew mentioned Fort Detrick. I've written about the work done at Fort Detrick for years. And I know that U.S. labs around the country experiment with viruses, bacteria, other dangerous organisms to find a way to respond to it. And U.S. labs, as documented by USA Today when I was there in 2016, have their own problems. So it's certainly very possible that they could have been upgrading this virus in Wuhan. Somebody got it on a piece of clothing, didn't use the proper precautions. Next thing you know, it's out, and then they covered up. Definitely. And is Peter Daszak a bad guy, and is he trying to cover up some of his own culpability? Very possibly. I don't know that, but people lie, people cover up. That happens all the time. So there's a lot of things to get to the bottom of. One, we want to know where this thing came from, why it came from there, who's lying about it, and then we need to take accountability, every government around the world, for its own response to the pandemic and what they did to stop it. The United States had a major problem. 596,000 people died. India had a similar problem. Almost 400,000 people have died there because of this. So, yes, blame the Chinese for sloppy handling of the virus, blame other people for possibly coming up. But let's all take responsibility for what these governments need to do to stop a pandemic that we all could have seen coming.
Narendra,
I think all of us around the world, and I can speak for India. Yeah. Ravi Batra, can I quickly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to? Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Ravi Batra, because I want to get my other panelists in. Please, yes.
2020 last year, I wrote to President Trump documenting that this biowarfare agent came out of the Wuhan Virology lab, which is PLA owned. It's a scientific fact. Now, people who don't understand it, including your panelists, they can only say, well, it's possible. Well, learn the biochemistry, learn the epidemiology as I did, and you'll come to that conclusion. It's inescapable. You know, truth is not a popularity contest. It is what it is, no matter whether other people get it or not. And you have to credit President Trump for launching an investigation of China the very next day after confirming the science in my letter. And I applaud President Biden for having launched the 90-day investigation. Okay? So don't accuse the United States of maybe not understanding how we were Pearl Harbored. That's wrong. That's punishing the victim.
Yeah.
The United States is a victim of the Wuhan virus.
Yeah,
It is a biowarfare agent, and we need to disarm it. But let's not accuse the United States of this.
No, India has been one of the biggest. Mr. Batra, India has been one of the biggest victims of this, along with America, and that's why we feel, Srijan Pal Singh, that's why we feel maybe India is being cagey, maybe India is not speaking up as much as you would like India to speak, but certainly we can do more. There was a statement that came out from the Ministry of External Affairs, but do you think India should be more vocal on this?
Right. I mean, I think India has been one of the biggest sufferers, if not the biggest sufferers of the coronavirus crisis. And to be honest, we had nothing to do with it. I mean, if the American government agencies, we know that NIH money was routed through EcoHealth Alliance into the Wuhan lab. We don't know what happened to the Pentagon funding, but we know that government money from US was allotted to the Wuhan virus lab. We know that. It is more than clear now, 80-90% confidence I can say this, that this is a lab-manufactured virus. Whether the purpose was, a more, harmless purpose or it was an intentional bioweapon, we do not know. But India has nothing to do in the manufacture and propagation of this virus. We did not hide the fact that there were in 2019 November, there were 3 virologists who were infected by this virus in Wuhan. We did not hide that. We did not misguide the World Health Organization by saying that the virus does not transmit from human to human. We have suffered very badly in economics, in life. Families have been ripped apart. And I think India's strategy here on should be to figure out what is the truth. President Biden has set up a 90-day commission to find out what has actually happened, but do understand it's a U.S. government investigation. It will be for the U.S. government's sake. In all likelihood, U.S. government would like to take its role away from this entire virus's manufacturing. We also know that the North Carolina University is the one which taught gain-of-function experiment to the Wuhan virus lab. So all this is happening, and we should launch our own independent inquiry. We have wonderful scientists, and find out from our angle how did this virus happen, and that should be done. I think India should wait for all these responses to come in, and then we should be very aggressive about how this virus has impacted us, because we have absolutely no mistake in the manufacture of this dangerous experiment, gain of function. We don't do that. We don't play around with viruses. We don't do death experiments. And there's a saying that if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. And it is very clear. I mean, the entire subterfuge that virus came from Italy and virus came from here and there doesn't make sense. It is very clear that EcoHealth Alliance was the middleman which funded whatever money to the Wuhan virus lab. North Carolina was the place where the Wuhan virus lab learned the gain of function test. There is smoking gun all over the place, and I think India has a right to say to investigate this. I think there should be a global investigation where India plays a role, and we are also entitled to compensation for whatever we have lost.
Yeah, should India play a role? Yeah, no, but should India play a role? And you know, we have been very aggressive diplomatically vis-a-vis China. Has something changed? Let me go across to Ketan Vaidya. He's a journalist, and then I'll get Savio to respond to him. Ketan Vaidya, would you back the Indian government seeking accountability from China?
Well, India is not a small country, and it has every right to seek accountability from China. I was hearing to all the esteemed panelists, and I have spent a little time in working in the State Department in Mumbai and Delhi. And I know that everything is not hunky and dory between China and the United States. So India should definitely use its diplomatic leverage, its ongoing good relations with China to go to the root of the problem. I read somewhere that Dr. Peter Daszak has said in an interview in August 2020 that he was caught in a political crosshair on the matter. However, there is no reason why we should just bail off Peter Daszak, because he needs to do a lot of answering. The world is keen to know where and how did the coronavirus emerge and how so quickly it spread across the world, because it has failed doctors, pulmonologists, pharmacologists, researchers. However, what should concern India, Niranjan, more than these deflection is our response to the virus. And this is where Mr. Batra said that, Dr. Batra said that we have to disarm the virus, which has caused so much harm to US and more so to India. So China has brought the virus in check, or at least the cases are in control. US has inoculated most of its population. We are still waiting for the second dose, while due to global obligation, we have sent 6 crore doses abroad. So do we have an Indian obligation to vaccinate its population or not? And largely, US and China diplomatically are not running a smooth course in their relation. So India should focus on its own population than getting caught in a global crossfire between US and China. Having said that, India diplomatically has every right to seek questions to the global community and be part of any investigation which seeks answer, not for China, not for US, but for the world. However, I think India's priority should be not to deflect attention or get too much involved in the crossfire between US and China, but to inoculate its population and bring the numbers in check in India.
Okay. Let me quickly get in. Savio. 3 more speakers haven't spoken. Savio.
Okay. Having heard every single panelist till now, except for Professor Giri, I just want to make 5 very crucial points. The first most important point, that the coronavirus and the COVID pandemic, whether people agree with me or not on this panel or otherwise, is a bioweapon, and it is a bio-warfare unleashed by China on the rest of the world. Point number 1. Point number 2, this gentleman from Washington spoke about he's not sure whether there was funding from the US to the Wuhan lab. Let me give him the dates. January 6th, 2014, NIH transferred an amount of money to Professor Xi Jinping for a particular study on bat viruses. The amount was $665,000. January 10th, 2014, on a similar study, $500,500 was transferred to Professor Xi Jinping of the Wuhan lab. Point number 3, important one. The first cases of Wuhan, according to Dr. Stephen Key, who had done a bit of research on the virus and the way the virus traveled from China to the rest of the world, mentions that the first 4 cases were at the PLA hospital. Now the PLA hospital is a military-based hospital. If the cases came out from Wuhan, wet lab, or the Hunan seafood market, as the World Health Organization would like to portray, and some of the panelists over here, then what were they doing in a military hospital and not a civilian hospital that were nearby? There are almost 20 civilian hospitals nearby. Why did they go to a military hospital? Which raises a question that because Wuhan lab is also looked after by the military of China, the PLA army, the cases of leakage would have happened at Wuhan. And this is not, please believe me or not. In 2017, Dr. Fauci made a very interesting statement at, let me tell you where. He made an interesting statement at the Georgetown University, and he said that the Trump-led administration, in its term, would face a surprise outbreak of an infectious disease. How did Dr. Fauci know in 2017 that there is a probability that the Trump administration would face a surprise infectious disease? Point number 5 is the NIH database itself carries an article, a research study put out. Let me tell you what that study says. This is an article written by Rosanna Segreto and Yuri Daikin. It states the genetic structure of SARS-CoV-2 does not rule out a laboratory origin. SARS-CoV-2 chimeric structure and furin cleavage site might be the result of genetic manipulation. Genetic manipulation. Can the gentleman from Hong Kong deny? Wait.
Yeah.
Can the gentleman from Hong Kong deny that in 2017 the subjects taught at the National Defense University spoke about bio-warfare? They spoke about bio-warfare, Niranjan.
1 second.
And the military defense was the subject, which talks about genetic manipulation of ethnicity.
Yeah. Can I respond to this, please?
They did, and we have all the proof. Professor Giri hasn't spoken. Yes, Ravi Batra, I'll come to you because one speaker hasn't spoken. One speaker hasn't spoken. One speaker hasn't spoken. I quickly want to go across to him. I have very little time. Professor Giri, where do you stand on this? Quickly, where do you stand on this?
In my book Modi's.
Oh, Mr. Bansal, Captain Bansal hasn't spoken. Captain Bansal also hasn't spoken. Can I please get another panelist in? I apologize. Captain Bansal also hasn't spoken. Okay. Yeah. Captain Bansal and then Professor Giri. Captain Bansal and then Professor Giri. Yes.
I just wanted to make, I think, having heard all the panelists, there are some issues which we need to take into account. As early as 2015, Xi Jinping has acknowledged that Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance and the US Department of Health has funded him. He's also acknowledged that this function gain research can be dangerous. So, as early as 2015, the Wuhan Institute knew that this research which they are carrying out has a dangerous ribbon. Then there are, of course, a PLA paper which says that 2015 that this bio-warfare can be used whereby pandemics could be released, whereby health system of the other target countries could be overwhelmed. Thereafter, there is a clear-cut fact that $120 million have been funded to EcoHealth Alliance. $39 million is just from Pentagon, but of course, US had 60 million. There are other 6-7 agencies which have funded another $20 million. Peter Daszak is part of the team which gives a clean chit to Wuhan lab. Peter Daszak is the person who thanks Anthony Fauci for saying that this is not artificial. I think all the pieces fall into the place. You have an artificially created virus which is created in the lab, and a person who's hand in glove with that lab is giving them a clean chit. In fact, as a part of the US establishment, I think a time has come for the state government, the United States government, to investigate Peter Daszak and his linkages with creating this global menace. I know there might be agencies in US which have something to hide, but I think a time has come for a global investigation into it, why this menace has come out of this lab, and what is Dr. Peter Daszak's involvement in it.
And also investigate Fauci.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly,
Professor Giri.
both of them are linked.
Professor Giri. Yeah, Professor Giri. He hasn't spoken. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, they are. Professor Giri.
Niranjan, very briefly. I think the best, the explanation of this is that someone has defined the acronym COVID-19, and it is doing the rounds in social media, which is called China Organized Virus in December 19. So that says it all. But my problem is, you see, we know what China is. It is autocratic, irrendist, expansionist. But I am intrigued and really dismayed by United States policy. Now, the China-US relation is getting murky. And we knew that they had deep financial relations, but other links also are being exposed. Now, let me tell you, you see, US builds up Taliban, then goes to fight it. US props up Saddam Hussein, then goes there to fight it. US economically builds up China. Now, when it challenges USA, it goes to fight China. I don't know what is US foreign policy is about. You see, they are one step, they follow Mao Zedong than anybody else, I think.
Yeah.
One step forward and 2 steps backward. They did that with
No,
Pakistan.
this is a debate. This is not about,
USA has to explain now.
So, can we talk COVID?
So it is about USA, but
can we talk about COVID?
Be worried about this. We should not be worried about this.
I have very limited time, Professor.
Last meeting, we should say and name in China. But yes, I'm telling you, we should rebuild our economy. We should rehabilitate our people and reconcile them. They have been traumatized, and we should focus on rebuilding ourselves. Then really worry about the China and America's tug of war. That is really waste of time.
Okay.
I need 30 seconds.
Professor.
I make one point.
Professor Giri, I've completely run out of time. Dr. Ravi Batra, Ray Locker, Andrew, I'm really sorry. Srijan, I really don't have time. Srijan, I apologize. I promise we'll take this up again tomorrow. Srijan, Professor Giri, Captain Bansal, Ketan, I have to take a break. Savio, I have to take a break. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.